Kris and Lisanne were best friends from Amersfoort, Netherlands, who had spent 6 months planning a special trip to Panama. Both were recent graduates, Kris in art education and Lisanne in applied psychology, and they shared a passion for travel, volunteering, and adventure. In March 2014, they arrived in Panama to volunteer with children and learn Spanish, mixing service work with sightseeing. By late March, they settled with a host family in the mountain town of Boquete, known for its cloud forests and hiking trails. The girls were excited and kept in daily touch with family back home, texting updates about their journey. On April 1st, 2014, just one day after Lisanne's 22nd birthday, the pair decided to hike the El Pianista Trail, a scenic route north of Boquete. They set out late that morning, reportedly around 11 o'clock in the morning, after having brunch with 2 fellow Dutch travelers. They even took the host family's dog, a playful companion, along for the trek. Both were dressed in light hiking gear t-shirts, shorts, and boots, and carried a small backpack with essentials like water, a Canon PowerShot camera, phones, and perhaps some snacks. The El Pianista Trail starts as an easy path through pastures and then ascends into dense cloud forest, leading to a lookout point on the Continental Divide about 2 to 3 hours in. It's an out and back trail, one way in, one way out, commonly hiked by tourists without a guide due to its popularity and clear route. At the summit, called El Mirador, hikers normally turn back to return to Boquete, but Kris and Lisanne did not turn back. Photos recovered later show they continued past the divide, heading down the other side into more remote jungle terrain toward the Caribbean side after about 1 o'clock in the afternoon. The last photo of them alive was taken at 1:54 in the afternoon on April 1st. Near a creek in the wilderness, they appeared happy and unhurt at that time. Sometime in the next few hours, however, things went terribly wrong. There is a 3-hour gap between their final smiling photo and their first attempt to call for help. At 4:39 in the afternoon on April 1st, one of the women dialed 112, the international emergency number used in the Netherlands. 10 minutes later, at 4:51 in the afternoon, the other phone dialed 911, Panama's emergency line. Neither call succeeded. Deep in the cloud forest, there was no cell signal. As evening fell, concern turned to alarm. The women did not return to their host family by nightfall. By the next day, April 2nd, Kris and Lisanne missed an important appointment. They had scheduled a guided tour of Boquete with a local guide for that morning, a tour they never showed up for. This was a red flag. The host family alerted authorities that the girls were missing on the trail. Local police organized aerial searches and ground search parties, combing the village and nearby forest edges with volunteers and indigenous Ingabe guides. Over the following days, posters went up and townspeople joined the effort, but no trace of the women was found. On April 6th, 6 days after the disappearance, the worried families of Kris and Lisanne flew to Panama from the Netherlands. They brought along Dutch police officers and detectives to assist local law enforcement. Together with Panamanian police units, search dogs, and helicopters, they launched an intensive 10-day search in the jungles around the Pianista Trail. The parents even offered a $30,000 reward for information. Despite these efforts, from aerial scans to canine units on the ground, the dense rainforest yielded no clues. Days turned into weeks. By mid-April, hope began to wane as all searches came up empty. It was as if the jungle had swallowed the 2 young women without a trace. For 10 weeks, the fate of Kris and Lisanne remained a complete mystery. Then, in mid-June 2014, a local indigenous woman made a startling find. She turned in a blue backpack that she said she'd found lying on a riverbank near her village of Alto Romero. Alto Romero is a remote area on the Caribbean side of the Continental Divide, over 8 hours of hiking from the Pianista summit in the direction the women had apparently headed. The location was along the Culebra, or Serpent River, far from any established trail. Intriguingly, the woman claimed the backpack was discovered in a rice paddy by the river, and that it was dry and in good condition, not obviously damaged by 10 weeks of rain and jungle elements. Inside this small pack were items that confirmed it belonged to Lisanne. Lisanne's passport and insurance card, over $80 in cash, a water bottle, and 2 pairs of sunglasses, 2 bras, presumably one from each girl, Lisanne's Canon PowerShot camera and both cell phones, Lisanne's Samsung Galaxy S3 and Kris's iPhone 4. All these items were intact and remarkably dry. There were no obvious bloodstains, damage, or signs of a struggle on the belongings. The discovery of the backpack breathed new life into the investigation. Police and investigators finally had some hard evidence and immediately began analyzing the phones and camera for clues. The recovered phones told a grim timeline of the girls' attempt to survive. Investigators found that the phones had power for about 10 days after the hike began. During that period, 77 separate attempts were made to call emergency services, 112 in the Netherlands and 911 in Panama. The first emergency call was placed mere hours into their hike on April 1st around 4:39 in the afternoon, as noted earlier. This suggests that by late afternoon on day 1, Kris and Lisanne realized they were in an emergency. Whether lost, injured, or threatened, we do not know. Due to the dense jungle and remote area, none of those early calls went through to connect with authorities. The call logs paint a picture of determination and desperation. Multiple 112 and 911 attempts each day for the first few days, starting April 1st and continuing into April 2nd and 3rd. By April 4th, one of the phones, Lisanne's Samsung, ran out of battery and went dead at 5 o'clock in the morning after 4 days of use. Kris' iPhone, which had a longer-lasting battery, continued sporadic activity. Notably, after April 5th, the iPhone was switched on several times without the correct PIN being entered. In other words, someone was turning Kris's phone on but failing to unlock it. It's believed this was likely Lisanne trying to access Kris's iPhone after Lisanne's own phone died, suggesting that possibly Kris became incapacitated or lost the phone, leaving Lisanne alone to attempt using the iPhone, which she didn't know the passcode for. Between April 5th and April 11th, the iPhone was powered on intermittently perhaps to check for signal, but no further calls were attempted. The final iPhone on record was April 11th at 10:50, 1 in the morning, when it was turned on one last time and then shut off at 11:56, still having 22% battery left. After that, all went silent. There were no more communications from either woman's phone. If the phones provided a timeline of their calls, Lisanne's camera gave us a haunting visual record. The daytime photos taken on April 1st were normal enough selfies of Kris and Lisanne on the trail, smiling at the camera and posing near streams and trees. Image 496 shows the 2 girls arriving at El Mirador, the summit where most hikers typically turn back. However, for some unknown reason, Kris and Lisanne decided to continue deeper into the jungle, a decision evident in image 505, which shows them beyond the summit. The last known daytime photos, taken at 1:54 p.m. on April 1st, are images 507 and 508, showing Kris Kremers crossing a stream. After that, nothing was photographed for an entire week. Then, in the early hours of April 8, just before dawn, the camera mysteriously sprang back to life. It captured nearly 90 photos between 1 a.m. and 4 a.m. Most of the images show complete darkness, illuminated only by the camera's flash. It appears that someone was using the flash either as a source of light or possibly as a distress signal. Although many of the photos are blank or blurry, a few stand out for their disturbing details. Image 550 shows a close-up of a rock or riverbank with a stick driven into it. Tied to the stick are pieces of bright red plastic, possibly part of a bag. This could have been a makeshift trail marker or a signal for help. Image 541 appears to show the underside of someone's chin, presumably Lisanne's, as many have noted that the shape matches her features in other confirmed photos. Many of the photos are angled skyward, supporting the idea that the girls were using the flash to light their surroundings, or perhaps to attract attention in the dark. We'll get more into that later. Image 576 shows a piece of paper, a reflective object, and what seems to be a strap or belt. One notable detail is that the torn paper appears to resemble a map, a map that had also been seen in earlier photos with Lisanne holding it. Image 580 is perhaps one of the most haunting. It clearly shows strands of Kris Kremers' reddish-blonde hair. While no blood is visibly shown, many believe she may have sustained a head injury. It's possible they used the camera flash to inspect the wound, as no other reason has been proposed for such a close-up photo of her hair in the dark. Now remember, if the girls were truly lost, by the time this photo was taken, Kris's hair would likely have appeared dirty. Instead, it looks very clean. In the span of 3 hours, several photos appear to show the sky. Many people believe this was the perpetrator trying to manipulate the scene, possibly to suggest the girls were still alive at that time. It's also worth noting that all of these nighttime photos seem to have been taken in the same area. One final mystery lies in the photo sequence itself. The camera's images jump from image 508, the last daylight photo on April 1st, directly to image 510, the first night photo on April 8. Image 509 is missing. It's not present on the memory card, not even as a deleted file. Investigators couldn't retrieve it, and it's unclear whether it was ever taken or lost due to a camera malfunction. After finding the backpack, search teams returned to the Alto Romero area, and soon, more disturbing clues appeared along the banks of the Culebra River. The first major discovery was a pair of Kris Kremers denim shorts lying on a rock near the water. Early rumors claimed the shorts had been neatly folded, but crime scene photos released years later showed they were not folded at all, simply caught on the rock by the current or the wind. Still, their location strongly suggested that Kris and Lisanne had been near that river at some point. In the weeks that followed, investigators began to uncover scattered human remains in the same area. A hiking boot was found with a foot still inside, and DNA confirmed it belonged to Lisanne Froon. A pelvic bone discovered nearby was later matched to Kris Kremers, and as the search continued, at least 33 bone fragments were recovered along the riverbanks. In the end, only about 25% of Lisanne's skeleton and roughly 5% of Kris's were ever found. The condition of the bones raised even more questions. Lisanne's remains showed signs of normal decomposition in a tropical environment, with some tissue still attached. Kris's bones, however, were strikingly different, clean, white, and free from any marks made by animals or tools, almost as if they had been bleached. While the sun and environment can naturally lighten bones over time, the contrast between the two women's remains left some experts puzzled and wondering what circumstances could have caused such a difference. Despite forensic testing, the cause of death for Kris Kremers and Lisanne Froon could not be determined. There were no bullet holes, knife marks, or any clear evidence of foul play. Authorities suggested that the most likely explanation was an accident. Perhaps the women became lost, were injured, and eventually died from a fall or exposure in the harsh terrain. But with so little of their remains recovered, and so many details left unexplained, nothing has ever been proven, and the mystery surrounding their deaths continues to spark debate to this day. If you want us to continue digging into this case, and others like it, let me know below, and if you have your own theory about what happened in the jungle that day, share it in the comments. Thank you for watching, and stay curious, stay critical, and stay safe.